Hi there, welcome along to another Jenny Kirk video here on my YouTube channel, and today we're going to be continuing our series, just having a little look at the liveries of various things that are available ready to run. And today, following on from my little pre-grouping locomotive video that you can catch up here, then we're going to be looking at what's suitable for it to pull. And without further ado, let's take a closer look. Now, one of the things about ready to run pre-grouping, that is the pre-1923 period, is whilst we've already seen that we've got a fairly good provision of locomotives from some of the companies, what they have to pull is very, very lacking. So I'm going to start off with coaching stock. And first up, I'm going to bring in the ambulance train. And this is, well, it's a little bit of a kind of mix and make up and do set that came out from Bachmann. It's a lovely set. We did feature it in a box opening and review, but as you can see, it comes with these three coaches, ex-Midland Railway, well, Midland Railway coaches. It's a Midland Railway conversion for ambulance train. Let's just find that number. Ambulance train 40, just see it on there. And if you're modelling the First World War period, so for example, we talked a little bit about the Southeastern and Chatham Railway wartime austerity grey locomotives, things like we had the N class, we have the C class, and there's a forthcoming P class from Hatton's as well, all going to be coming out in that livery, all suitable for the First World War. But that's quite late in the pre-grouping period. But it's better than nothing. So we've got ourselves an ambulance train. These, you could have seen these running on the network, fairly widespread. So they do go across a few different companies. They would have run on different railway companies' networks, being hauled by a variety of different locomotives. They're good through till about 1919, and then they would have probably been converted back into their previous pre-war uses. Now, to the best of my knowledge, Bachmann have not released these coaches in the Midland Railway livery. They have done them in LMS livery and a multitude of later BR period. But in terms of pre-grouping, these are the only ones that I've seen about. So, you know, beggars can't be choosers. And the next set that is on the market, and this really is an exquisite set. These are suitable from pre-First World War, going back into the Edwardian period, and these are the Southeastern and Chatham Railway Birdcage stock. Very recently released from Bachmann, and they are exquisite. We've done a box opening and review of these, and really there's hardly anything, if at all, to fault with them. They are just a superb rendition, and they're not just a re-livery. As we talked about in the review, we look at there at the roof detail. Those conduits for the lighting, they're accurate for the pre-grouping period. Later on, they were rejigged a little bit by the Southern Railway, by BR. So these really are completely and utterly accurate for the period we want to model. Now, they would have been, I think from memory, stand to be corrected a little bit on this, these are good from about 1910, something like that, right through until being absorbed into Southern Railway stock in 1923. So pretty wide-ranging. It has to be said that whilst during the First World War, coaches that would have gone through the works during the First World War would have received a slightly simplified lining on them, any coaches that were outshopped immediately before the war, it's quite conceivable that they could actually have stayed in this livery right through to grouping, and probably even for a year or two past that point, maybe with the change of ownership on there as Southern instead of SECR. But even so, these are pretty wide-ranging, but these would have been pretty rigidly confined to the Southeastern and Chatham Railway network. So not really a far-ranging item of ready-to-run rolling stock, but if you modelled the Southeastern and Chatham Railway, there is a pretty good provision. We've got that C class, we've got the N class, the P class is to come. We've also got a Terrier from Hornby, came out in the Southeastern and Chatham Railway livery. So, you know, that's what, 4 different locomotives. The C class has appeared 3 times in a Southeastern and Chatham Railway livery. So we're doing pretty well. The P class as well, I think there's 3 different liveries suitable for the Southeastern and Chatham Railway forthcoming. So pretty good stuff, but only if you model that. Now, I don't have an example of the Southeastern and Chatham Railway dance hall brake van, but it does need a mention. It came out from Hornby, was released at least once in the Southeastern and Chatham Railway livery, but it is an older style model with the big fat couplings, and it's not one that I have in my collection, and it's not one which I have any desire to have in my collection, because I feel that these older models really, they're just let down by the fat couplings. Hornby have announced that they're bringing out retooled wagons into their fleet, things like the private owner coal wagons with an updated chassis, and I will be investing in some of these as and when I see them in the shops, and we'll be doing a box opening and review on them. But until the Downsall brake van turns up with a retooled chassis, it's one I'm going to give a miss. It also should be said that that came out very, very late in the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway period, so you're probably looking about, what, 1922, 1923, so right before the grouping, and that means that it's probably one that's as good as a Southern Railway item, to tell you the honest truth. Now, all of these so far are what I'd say period 2, era 2, going by the Bachmann period. If you want earlier stuff, you're looking at stuff like this. And this is the Liverpool and Manchester liveried coaches. They did do a number of these with different names on. This is actually from the Great British Locomotives set. They did this with their, they did this with their rendition of the Rocket and one coach. But there was such a good model, I did actually end up getting myself one of these, because why not? I got a few of these. This is what era 1 would look like. And to the best of my knowledge, the only ready-to-run stuff that you're really going to find is the Triang Hornby version of this. And they're pretty long in the tooth now, quite rare actually. And I think getting hold of them might prove somewhat tricky. So I offer this up as an alternative. The real ones are out there, but you're going to struggle to find too many of them, and you're probably also going to struggle finding the locomotives and the stock to go with them. But just there as an example. Now, other freight rolling stock. We've talked a little bit about the Southeastern and Chatham Railway, and I'll be honest with you, they're probably, out of all the companies, for whatever reason, they have the best selection of ready-to-run rolling stock. It's not the most far-fetching, but the stuff is out there. I mean, if you're prepared to make do with the Hornby dancehall brake van, then you've got your brake van, that's very important. But there's also this set of 3 open wagons. These came from Bachmann, ready to run. They were in the Collectors Club, and if you were a member of the Collectors Club, just after the C class in the wartime grey livery came out, they produced this 3-pack of wagons to give you something to run with it. And it was very, very welcome indeed. Sold out very, very quickly. Quite desirable, these, but I did manage to snaffle myself a set, and they were well worth every penny just to get these. And whenever I run Grove Street Yard in the pre-grouping period, these do get a lot of use. So, you know, they're more than just display cabinet fodder. The wagons themselves, now this is where we start to fall down with pre-grouping wagons. In terms of liveries, the liveries are correct for pre-grouping wagons. But the actual base wagon that they're on, we've got the, we've got the 7-plank end-door tipping wagon. We've got the 8-plank ordinary open wagon, and we've got the 5-plank open wagon. These are all post-1923 railway clearinghouse designs. So whilst the liveries are accurate for wagons that would have been built for and used by the Southeastern and Chatham Railway, the base wagons isn't right, and it's a big bugbear of pre-grouping modelers that very few, in fact the only company that I can think of who have tooled up regular coal wagons suitable for pre-1923 so far is Oxford Rail. and we're going to take a look at that wagon in a moment. But these needs must, beggars can't be choosers, but it has to be said that there's a little bit of a gripe on those, and you're going to see that that's going to become a little bit of a theme. Right, Southeastern and Chatham Railway, one final wagon. It's not actually Southeastern and Chatham Railway, but this wagon gets an honorary mention. It's in a private owner livery, and I think its base wagon is the London and Northeastern Railway fruit van. I could be wrong, I must actually compare it. But it does look every part suitable for the pre-grouping period. And this is the Shepherd Neame wagon that was produced by Erith Model Railway Society as a special commission. They did it with it was a tank wagon. I'm trying to remember, I can't remember off the top of my head, the company that they released the tank wagon for. There's been 2 of these, as far as I know. It's been released weathered and unweathered. But let's see, this is number 4. It's got the running number 4, but I'm not clear because I don't own the other one, whether that has a different running number or whether it's the same wagon but unweathered. But as an honorary mention, this is eminently suitable in my mind. It looks the part for a pre-grouping layout. So whenever Grove Street Yard is out and about in its pre-1923 guise, this wagon is a very, very rare, ready-to-run, pre-grouping ventilated van. Does get a look in. I'm not sure whether it's strictly actually accurate for that period, but certainly the use of the London and Northeastern Railway fruit van as its basis suggests to me that what we've actually got here is a very good attempt to model a pre-grouping wagon as accurately as is possible without actually retooling up for a completely new wagon. It has to be said that in the pre-grouping period, wagons that were being built to the 1907 Railway Clearinghouse standards, there was a lot more flexibility for wagons to differ from each other, so a lot less standardisation, and that's probably one of the reasons that there's less inclination for manufacturers to produce ready-to-run wagons. Now what we have here is 2 wagons from a 3-wagon set that the Bachmann Collectors Club again produced as a special commission to go in keeping with Robinson 9J, which was later the LNER J11 freight locomotive that they produced in the Great Central Railway lined livery. Now, if you remember from the last video that I did about the liveries available ready to run in the pre-grouping period, there were a number of Great Central Railway locomotives available. Well, what you're looking at here is the sum total of ready-to-run wagons that I've got really suitable for them. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice only one of them is actually lettered up as Great Central. Now, I know that Hornby has had in their range from the sort of 80s and 90s a Great Central Coke wagon. I have seen it advertised, and again, I don't have it because it's on a woeful chassis, and sometimes you have to just draw the line, and sometimes a model just becomes so bad that it isn't worth it just for the livery that's on it. So I've passed up on the Great Central Coke wagon, but it is out there for anybody for whom the livery is more important than the actual base wagon. And as far as I'm aware, it may actually be suitable for a pre-grouping period. But anyway, Great Central Liveried wagon came out of Gorton Works. It's a pretty nice wagon. Base wagon is the 3-plank wagon from Bachmann, and they have remembered to not do it with the vacuum brake cylinder that a lot of these wagons have appeared from Bachmann with to suit their later LMS and also BR period liveries. Now, you may think that's a funny thing for me to say. Of course it shouldn't have a vacuum cylinder, but bear with me because there's another wagon I'm going to show you in a bit where there's a little bit of a faux pas in terms of that vacuum cylinder, so just bear that in mind. This other wagon was the 2nd wagon in that 3-wagon set, and you're thinking, well, 3-wagon set, where's the 3rd wagon? Well, I'll tell you, the 3rd wagon was in an LNER suitable livery. It actually says return to somewhere in Manchester on the London and Northeastern Railway network. So it's a private owner coal wagon, and it really is not suitable. And there was a lot of talk at the time as to why they put a very clearly identifiable London and Northeastern Railway liveried wagon in a Great Central Railway pack. But enough said about that. This one CL. Well, that stands for the Cheshire Lines Committee. That was a joint enterprise with a number of other railway companies to run a number of lines, and as the name would suggest, in this sort of Cheshire area. And one of the things that the Great Central Railway supplied for use there were a number of wagons, including this one. And to denote its, I suppose, parent ownership as being part of the joint railway agreement, it's lettered up there as CL for the Cheshire Lines Committee. Now, as we said before with the Southeastern and Chatham railway wagons, the base wagons on both of these are post-1923. But they are pretty accurately detailed. There's a lot of good things that I've said over the years about the Bachmann wagons in the branch line range, and so I'm prepared to accept these in this livery, and I suppose that's why they keep coming. There's modelers there who will be shouting at the screen and saying, well, as long as you're prepared to accept them and buy them, there's no impetus on the railway manufacturers to produce a more accurate wagon. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but sometimes needs must. If you waited and waited, you could well end up with nothing at all. So we've got this pair, a lovely little pair of wagons in this this kind of grey colour. They have been featured in a 3-pack review. I did manage to track these down from Worley Model Railway exhibition, because they came out when I wasn't a member of the club, so a little bit difficult to track down. Right, other railway companies now. This is an Oxford Rail, North British Railway, 4-plank, open end tipping wagon. It was one of the first things that they brought to the market, and it was a very welcome addition. A lot of people poo-pooed the earlier Oxford Rail offerings, saying that they were rushed to market, that they weren't as accurately and faithfully researched as other companies were producing. But I kind of like it, and I'm prepared to overlook a lot of its foibles, because as I said in the time in the box opening and review for this wagon, at the price that they're coming out at, a lower price and like less than half what a comparable wagon from the likes of Bachmann were coming out at, I'm prepared to overlook quite a lot. So this wagon is suitable for the pre-1923 period, the base wagon, and the livery is as well. And so far it's the only item that I've seen out and about suitable for the North British Railway. Hornby have announced the J36 Maud in North British Railway livery, and it's one I'm looking forward to. You're going to see that in a box opening and review on this channel. It has to be said, it's going to happen. It's just too pretty a livery to let that one pass me by. So, Hornby, you've got a sale there. But this wagon is the only North British wagon liveried one that I've got, whilst Oxford Rail have re-released the wagon in its later London and Northeastern Railway livery a number of times. You can get different running numbers with the NE on the side. In the North British livery, such as this, there is only, to the best of my knowledge, one production run, and maybe that speaks volumes about why there's not so much ready-to-run pre-grouping stock being produced. It's just simply the case that it's not selling as well as we would like. And yes, there are some very vocal pre-grouping modelers, such as myself, but we're not enough to sustain it, unfortunately so. So every time I see these, if the base wagon is good enough, I do feel obliged to support the livery representations by buying them. Right, let's put that one to one side. Let's have a look. You remember that we talked about in the ready-to-run liveries for locomotives video. We had that Midland Railway 4F, and I alluded to the existence of this brake van. This is an offering from Bachmann. Now, we've done a box opening and review of this as well. A lot of these have come out more recently, and as a result, have formed the basis for an awful lot of box opening and reviews on this channel. So it's perfectly possible to go back and you can have a look at my in-depth review of some of these wagons. This particular one, Bachmann must be applauded for bringing out a ready-to-run, high-quality model of a pre-grouping brake van. It has to be said that this brake van lasted through the LMS period and into BR ownership, so it was eminently suitable to carry a number of liveries and tick the boxes for the BR period and the Big Four period, which is probably something that was quite important for a lot of these ready-to-run wagons. And they did put it out in the Midland Railway livery, and I just felt obliged to pick this up, even though it was right at the point where I think the price pretty much doubled over the previous BR and LMS liveries that they produced, I think, the year before this came out. So I had to bite my tongue and buy it. If they brought out another one, I have to say I probably wouldn't buy it. At the moment, I've only got one Midland Railway freight locomotive, so how many brake bands do you need? That said, I think I've got about 5 of the LMS liveried ones, because I keep finding them either second-hand or they come up in box sets, like the Worley one that we did a box opening and review of. But if you've got a brake van, it does mean that you can run the really colourful private owner liveried wagons. And I know that some of you have probably been thinking, why has she not mentioned these? Well, the biggest problem is that unless you get some of the ones that Oxford Rail have based on the North British Railway 4-plank wagon, and there are a number of Scottish themed ones, and we've done a box opening and review on one of them. The wagons themselves, I've got 2 here, which I've picked out because the livery actually alludes to existence of pre-grouping railway systems. It's why I've picked them. But the base wagons are post-1923 railway clearinghouse designs. So again, it's an example of you have to pick carefully. Yes, some of these liveries are suitable for the pre-grouping period, but invariably the wagon on which they find themselves is not. And it's very difficult often, unless you do a lot of research, to actually know which liveries are suitable. So I've picked out these 2 because these give you a little helping clue. And I think we've done a box opening and review on this one. And this is the Charles Sinclair wagon that was produced as a limited edition for Friesling Hall models quite a while ago now, a number of years. But the key point is it refers to the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway in the lettering. That's a pre-1923 railway company, and in my mind that says that this livery must be suitable for the pre-grouping period. A word of warning on this though is that quite often there is a resistance to change. So what you would find is that colliery owners or coal merchants or other businesses, even after grouping and these companies became one of the big 4, may have persisted in lettering their wagons to refer to the previous railway companies that ran their system, because it was, well, we've always done this. So just because it says Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway might not necessarily mean it's suitable, but for me it's good enough, even though that base wagon is not actually appropriate. And again, on this Stringer and Jagger wagon, we've got return to Clayton West, Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. So again, another clue that these wagons wouldn't look out of place in a pre-grouping coal train. So it's one to look out for, a bit of a wild card for you. Now, I've got 2 more wagons to show you. I'm going to bring this one in first. Again, we did a box opening and review on this, so there's a good in-depth review of it, and I go over the foibles of what happens when you actually just do a re-livery on a wagon that's not really suitable for it. This wagon is actually for quite an obscure railway company. We've got here the Garstang and Knott End Railway Company. It was a very, very short-lived line. It's a very short line. It goes from Garstang to Knott End. And that's near, I think it's the other side of the tidal area, the mudflats, from Fleetwood. So it was a port that always played second fiddle to Fleetwood and really lost out. But the Garstang and Knott End Railway, it struggled for all of its existence. But there's a shop up in Fleetwood. I'm trying to remember what they were called. No, it's unfortunately, the name has eluded me, but it is in the box opening and review video if you go and have a look at that. They produced as a special commission this wagon from Bachmann. Bachmann based it on their 1-plank low-fit wagon, which has appeared more accurately in BR and LMS liveries. But here it's trying to represent a wagon suitable for very much firmly in the Victorian period, so the 19th century. And actually, this is what I was referring to before. If you look underneath, it's got a vacuum cylinder. The real wagon would never have had that. So it's just a little bit of an error there on the assembly of this, and I can only conclude that this was tagged onto a production run of probably BR and LMS liveried 1-plank wagons. and it was something that it was just easier to repaint these as part of the tampo printing process without assembling them differently, otherwise it would have bumped up the cost. So we're going to have to forgive that. But in terms of pre-grouping, I doubt this would have really worked off the Garstang and Knott End Railway. But we can, apply Rule 1, we can stretch the truth a little bit there. And it does mean that there's another little bit different pre-grouping wagon that we can run out there. Right, the final wagon that I've got for you is this from Oxford Rail. They do also do a four-wheeled version of this, which I believe, if you're very careful about which liveries you choose, is suitable. But we've done a box opening and review of this. Actually proved very, very popular. A lot of you watched that, which is good to know. And it's got I call it the bungalow window, I've referred to it as the ranch house window, all sorts of things. But it's just, Oxford Rail, what were you thinking? But even so, to get this wagon, it's something that, I talked about with the Midland Railway brake van, and there's also, if you really want to put a bit of effort in to bring it up to standard or are prepared to accept its foibles, there's also that London, Brighton and South Coast Railway dance hall wagon from Hornby. The brake van is the key, because with the brake van, you have a lot of these colourful private owner liveries, and that means you can make up a goods train without needing to go and track down a lot of these other wagons with suitable liveries. I mean, you can mix these in, but you can very quickly make up a good train by having a load of these that are fairly readily available. Now, when you buy these, it's something that I've found with the Great Western Railway, you have to be ever so careful. The Great Western Railway was the only one of the big four that was formed through absorbing other railways. So it was an amalgamation, it was a merger, but the Great Western Railway persisted. None of the other big four had that. They were a grouping of equally large companies, but the Great Western persisted, and that means the liveries persisted to some degree. And that makes ready-to-run stuff very, very difficult, because the manufacturers seem very loath to give you any real information as to whether it's suitable for the pre-1923 Great Western period. Now, there's a lot of Great Western liveried wagons that have come out suitable for the Big Four period, but they're all on those 1923, post-1923 railway clearinghouse designs, and that means that they really very much fall into that Big Four period. I'm sorry, you can't really get away from that. The other thing as well is that the Great Western Railway did change its liveries, and it did have some detail differences between different periods. No more so than this wagon. We can see there at the bottom it's planked all the way down to the bottom. You'll see that more closely in the box opening and review that we did. But later on, because these started to rot out, on the later period, suitable for the later Big Four Great Western period, these were plated at the bottom. Now, the problem with that is that you have to pick wisely, and also there's differences with the lettering. You can see clearly handwritten, sign lettered at the bottom there. Later on they used stencils. That's about as much as I know, I have to say, so just be very careful if you want to stick rigidly suitable for the pre-grouping period of the Great Western Railway. Now, locomotive-wise, well, there's definitely the City class, we talked a bit about that, but other than that, Oxford Rail do the Dean goods. They've done them in a very clear pre-1923 livery. They're about to bring out a First World War liveried one as well, but you just got to be careful. Now, other things I have to mention that I don't have. Daypole have produced the Gunpowder Wagon. I don't have an example, so I'm just going to hold something pretty whilst I talk about something else. Daypole have produced the Gunpowder Wagon in a London and North Western Railway livery. I don't have one. I don't think the base wagon is at all suitable. I think as well the base wagon is actually a BR diagram wagon, or at the very least it's something like a Great Western Big Four period wagon, but certainly the London and North Western Railway livery is not suitable, and the base wagon actually dates back to Hornby 00 days. Hornby have produced a 3-plank wagon that I've seen in Southeastern and Chatham Railway livery. Again, Southeastern and Chatham Railway livery is pretty well catered for. So got a couple of the wagons here just to show you again, already shown you them. But that wagon has the somewhat old-fashioned style chassis with the big clunky couplings, and I'm afraid, Hornby, I'm sorry, but it was a deal breaker for me. That said, the new range of wagons with the retooled chassis, looking forward to them, and there is a rumour that the 3-plank in Southeastern and Chatham Railway may have actually moved over into the newer range, so it may be one that I'll be making a beeline for. What else have I seen out there suitable for the pre-grouping period? I can't really think of anything else. There's probably a few glaring ones. Now, the Parrot wagon from Bachmann, it's been announced, and it's going to be released in, I think, London and North Western Railway livery, but also War Department livery, suitable for the First World War. And that's something that I'll be looking forward to, but I have seen a rather eye-watering price on it. So it's going to be one that I'll make a decision when it turns up. Other than those wagons, I'm sorry, but you're out of luck. You're going to have to build kits. But I think that's probably one of the joys of pre-grouping. If you do go into it and you do like building kits, there's a lot of wagon kits out there that are suitable from the likes of Ratio, Parkside Dundas, and also other providers. So there is scope if you're prepared to build your own wagons, but for those of us like me whose skills in building wagons and locomotives is very limited, and you don't want to ruin a kit by making a complete hash of particularly the painting, these things are a lifesaver. I only hope that Hornby, Bachmann, Oxford Rail and Daypol tool up many more new wagons suitable for that pre-1923 period. And the 1907 Railway Clearinghouse designs lasted into the Big Four period and actually did last through into the early part of the BR period. So really there is no real reason why new wagon types can't be tooled up to be suitable for that pre-grouping period as well as the post-grouping period. Well, thanks for watching that. I hope that was informative to you. Don't forget to like this video, share it too, and also subscribe to the channel, and you'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. But until next time, you need to take very good care of yourself, because I need to see you back here on the channel for the next video. But until then, bye for now. Today's video was brought to you in part with the generous donations of those who've supported me on Patreon. A big thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson. If you want to see your name in lights, then pop on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knob T Mouse. Thanks, and catch you later.